It's hot, y'all.
The broadcast of the regular Police Conduct Oversight Commission will now begin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cynthia Jackson. I am the chair of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, and I'm going to call this meeting for June 8th, 2021 to order. As we begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the City Council and city staff as authorized under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, due to the declared local public health emergency. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota open meeting law. At this time, I am going to ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting, but I am also noting that Commissioner Crockett is unable to be with us this evening.
Commissioner Abdi.
Present.
Commissioner Sarah.
Present.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
Commissioner McGuire.
Present.
Commissioner Pino.
Here.
Commissioner Sparks.
Present.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Here.
Chair Jackson.
I am here.
There are 8 commissioners present.
All right, let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. Now we'll move on to adoption of the agenda, a copy of which has been posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. The first motion is the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Aye.
Do I need a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll? Commissioner Sarah, you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering if it'd be possible to add a discussion topic to the agenda, and if so, would this be the appropriate moment to ask that, or should I wait until we go through the agenda?
If you would like to make a motion to amend the agenda, this is when you should do it.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. I would like to add the discussion point of the city's response to George Floyd Square at 38th in Chicago.
Would someone second that?
I'll second it.
I will second.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abdi.
Present.
This is on the
Or
motion.
aye, sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Yay.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
That motion carries and the minutes for the May meeting are accepted with the amendment. Now we will open the lines for public comments. The next order of business is the acceptance of public comments. We will invite comments from the community. We will also limit the public comment period to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. With that, are there any community members on the line who wish to address the commission? Please remember to press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Thank you.
This is Dave Bicking, but I think you just amended the agenda. I believe you still need to adopt the agenda and accept the minutes before it's my time.
Okay. I
That
thought
is
we did that.
indeed the case.
Unless there's objection, Madam Chair, I took your motion to be a motion to approve the agenda as amended and acceptance of the minutes. The roll was called. Unless a member of the commission wants to object, we will record the vote that way.
Everybody good? All right. Thank you, Dave, though. Would you like to make another comment?
Well, there's still the acceptance of the May minutes, isn't there?
Which I just explained was included with the one motion to approve the agenda as adopted and approve the minutes, all in one.
Oh, okay, all in one. Okay, well, that's unusual. Okay. Anyhow, I had a couple of things. You know, that the Department of Justice is coming in and doing an investigation, which is going to have a big impact on any recommendations you may make now, or whether the city has to go forward with some things that you might suggest. Communities United Against Police Brutality is having a series of events coming up, including one this Friday evening at 6 p.m. at Powderhorn Park, and this is in person, in which we're going to be inviting the community to talk about experiences they have had that should be passed on to the Department of Justice, and also to give suggestions. So anyhow, you can find that on the CUAPB Facebook, I'm sure, and there'll be 5 more spread throughout the summer. I'm glad you mentioned adding George Floyd Square to the agenda. I've been over there. It's people can have an opinion one way or the other about the streets being open, but it is shocking that the city has called this a community-led effort when there is one group that has been secretly paid $359,000 to work on this. And frankly, I don't know about this morning, but on Thursday morning, they threatened people and they actually assaulted some people. One person was injured when he was thrown into some heavy equipment. This is being done on behalf of the city. So I do hope you'll have a discussion. And finally, the policing in Uptown, I was there on Friday night. We're right back to the bad old stuff. There were rubber bullets. There was pepper spray in people's faces. There was kettling. There were people arrested without any warning or any order to disperse. I practically got arrested myself just for observing. So I hope that people will be aware that the Minneapolis police have not changed their practices regarding response to demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that information. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to make comments? Remember to press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name. I'm calling for any comments from the public that are on the line. If you'd like to make a comment, press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Well, as there are no other comments, I would like to thank Dave for his and move on. Our next item on the agenda are our reports. We have the audit subcommittee report and the policy and procedure. And first we will have Commissioner Pinot give us the audit subcommittee report.
Sure thing. We had 2 major discussion points at the audit subcommittee meeting in late May. First was a continued discussion on coaching, as well as a continued discussion on no-knock warrants. Just a general point for both of these. There is a process that is laid out as part of our audit methodology. and it's a document that we could review if people have interest in it, or at least submit it for the record. But we're at the first stage at both of these. So going into coaching in particular, we're talking about feasibility studies. We're reviewing the documentation, both immediately from the presentation that came in to this whole committee, our last meeting, which was very thoughtful. Thank you for providing the time for that, Madam Chair. And we're moving forward, making sure that we are formulating the right questions that are of interest, and we ask the commission and the public for patience on that as we continue to make sure that we're taking the right step forward. We are going to continue that conversation in our meeting in June. We did have a commissioner that wasn't present, and we want to make sure we get their opinions on that as well. On no-knock warrants, we reviewed some MDP policy, as well as the rubric that was provided to us from Campaign Zero, as well as a comparison of police department policy and procedures in regards to no-knock warrants for comparable cities to Minneapolis. That was provided by staff of OPCR. And again, that was another fundamental conversation about feasibility. What are questions that interest us regarding no-knock warrants, and what is the initial goals that we want to set for our audit committee in establishing a firm understanding of where no-knock warrants are at currently, and any potential action that can come from our exploring the data both here at the city, as well as other policies and procedures in comparable cities. Again, that conversation is going to be ongoing, and that will continue at our next meeting as well. That's about what I have for our audit report.
You're on mute, Chair Jackson.
All right, there we go. My computer is moving really slow tonight. Do we have any questions for Commissioner Pineau? Commissioner Sarah?
Hi. I did really appreciate the conversation we had at our last full commission meeting, but if I remember correctly, there were 3 commissioners in queue to ask questions, and it maybe more, but I saw 3 names for sure. So, excuse me, they were in queue to ask questions when the conversation ended and city staff left. And so at least 3 people didn't get to ask their questions, maybe more that I didn't see. I just want to make sure that everybody here has an opportunity to ask questions. I see we have city staff on the line, so, you know, maybe those that didn't get to ask their questions last time could ask today.
If I could add into that, since coaching is a research and study that is currently in the audit subcommittee, I'm perfectly fine as long as it's allowable for staff. If we don't have the staff that's available here right now, we could always bring up questions that are emailed to myself through my email, and we could talk about them in the audit subcommittee. I know that's been done in the past. I just want to make sure that from the clerk's perspective, that is acceptable, or is that, I see that Joel just raised his hand. Maybe he has an answer to that question.
Hello. Thank you, Commissioner Pino and commissioners. I can also add, I was in contact with my office this week, and I think, as maybe most of you are aware, the city was served with a lawsuit just recently, squarely dealing with the coaching issue that's been addressed over the past few months, and kind of pursuant with our standard litigation practice for any such lawsuit, until the lawsuit is resolved or during the pendency of that active litigation, city staff is going to be advised not to comment on the topic. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't continue your audit procedures, but during the pendency of active litigation, as it would be with any such matter, city staff won't be making public comment on the matter.
Okay, good to know. And since you're still up here, oh, you disappeared on me. Do you have an opinion on if people ask questions via email and we reserve the discussion and answering of those questions for an audit subcommittee? That sounds like it plays within the rules of open meeting laws. Am I wrong in that assumption?
I guess I'm not exactly following what the practice
People
is.
can ask questions, formulate questions and send them to me, for instance, as chair of the audit subcommittee, and I can just hold on to them and bring them up as questions to debate in strictly a public setting.
Yeah, I think so. I think what the open meeting law in terms of email communications seeks to avoid is the back and forth discussion occurring only on that email chain.
Yep.
But if it's used just for a communication purpose, I think that's legitimate.
Sounds good to me. Thank you. So I encourage anyone who has questions, and if they aren't able to be answered today, send me them in email form because we're talking about coaching anyway.
Do we have any more questions or discussion for Commissioner Pinot? Jackson, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No,
Any
I'm
thoughts? Good.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move right on along. And without any objection, nope, I'm ahead of myself. Hold on. Our next report, no. I'm so sorry, you guys. I didn't have a chance to look over this, and my computer's moving slow, and I'm a little frantic here. Okay, without objection, I'm going to direct the clerk to receive and file this report. Okay, so our next report is from the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee, and I will now recognize Commissioner Sarah, who will present that report.
Thank you. We had a really terrific meeting. I thought we had excellent discussion, excellent presentations from two very, very smart, interesting speakers. So I'll just sort of sum it up, and I hope that Commissioner Sylvester and Commissioner Abdi will join in as well and share their thoughts and their perspectives. The topic of the conversation was misdemeanor arrests and prosecutions in the city of Minneapolis. That would include all kinds of conduct. That would include pretext stops and arrests. It would include sort of nuisance or livability type crimes like public urination, open bottle, that kind of thing. And it also includes misdemeanor level domestic violence, misdemeanor level DUI. So, there's a very wide range of conduct that encompasses. And we had two speakers, City Attorney Mary Ellen Hang, who's the Deputy City Attorney and the Director of the Criminal Division of the City Attorney's Office. She's the lead prosecutor, in other words. And Harvard Law Professor Alexandra Natapov, whose primary focus and study is prosecution of misdemeanors and its impact on communities. So it was really a fruitful, interesting conversation. Kind of at a high level, what was discussed is that just as an example, 80% of all criminal cases in the United States are misdemeanors. So this is really the bulk of prosecution, arrest, courts. Misdemeanors are really driving criminal courts in the United States and in Minnesota as well. So they're very impactful. And what we heard from both speakers is that even what we might consider low-level charge, like public urination or something like that, can have very major impacts on people's lives. And so I think both speakers sort of asked us to be thoughtful about that. And are we, as a city, is this the impact we would like to have, that kind of thing. And so City Attorney Mary Ellen Hang gave a very thoughtful and very detailed presentation about all of the diversion courts and diversion programs that we already have in the city of Minneapolis. And I think it's fair to say that she is really a leader in this field. And she's really advocated very hard for diversion courts to keep people out, or at least away from just the traditional charge. You appear in front of the judge, you go to jail, like that kind of path. She's really trying to give people other options and other paths. And she explained a lot of details about that. Then Professor Natapov commended that work and said that it has real value and definitely has its place. And then she also talked about declining to charge misdemeanors, or just the reduction of charging the misdemeanor in the first place. So it's sort of taking it a step further. It would not be entering a person into a diversion program or diversion court. It would just be saying this person doesn't belong in the courts at all, and they're not under the purview of the courts in any way. And she made a distinction between sort of livability type, nuisance type crimes and in other types of offense and conduct. She had a lot to say. This is all on our YouTube channel, and honestly, it's worth watching. It was just really terrific, really thoughtful presentations. I've done a lot of talking, and I think the discussion was actually the best part. So I'd like to invite the other two commissioners to share their thoughts about it.
Yeah, I can go first. So I was particularly moved by this presentation. And I felt for the first time, just like being in this field, I felt hopeful for a solution. And then so I just think that if our elected officials really do want to make a change that they're saying they do, they need to do something drastic and consider this as a viable option. Like in my time as a probation officer, I saw how traumatic the court systems were for people. And if we really want to bridge the gap, like we're saying that we want to, we have to lead with empathy. And I think that this is something that's worth talking about more and bringing this discussion forward, because it can make a really huge impact on people's lives.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And I'm still being moved by this discussion, and I think about it probably every 3 hours or so. What really struck me is our discussion about what used to be called the Downtown 100, which is now called the Strategic Justice Initiative, which is basically focusing on the top 100 most frequent misdemeanor offenders in the downtown area, right? And so these are people that are chronically homeless, experiencing one or more mental illnesses, chemically addicted, often self-medicating. And what blows my mind is that these are the people that the first precinct officers deal with every day. They're the same people that I deal with every day as a paramedic, the same people that the county deals with, that the social workers are dealing with, that the downtown business districts are dealing with, like the prosecutor's office. Everybody is dealing with these same folks. And so Mary Ellen and I had probably a 30-minute discussion the day after this meeting, where we kind of laid out some ideas, some potential ideas on how maybe I, in my day job, how I can approach HCMC and try to look at, number one, can we start some sort of restorative justice process with staff at HCMC, with people that the prosecutor's office is in contact with, specifically about hospital-based assaults and trespasses and whatever. Is there restorative justice there? Number two, are there enough stakeholders at the table right now within this downtown business district and within this, strategic justice initiative dealing with these frequent people? Are there enough stakeholders at the table? So do we have prosecutors and the sheriff's department and MPD and downtown business folks and HCMC? Do we have the capacity to put all these people at the table and take a holistic view of these folks? And so instead of running them through the misdemeanor system over and over and over again, maybe we focus on housing. Maybe we focus on medication access. Maybe we focus on chemical dependency. You know what I mean? I'm a huge fan of low-hanging fruit in these discussions. Like, where's the easiest stuff that we can get done right now so that we can take the big giant brains, and I think we got some big giant brains in this group, so we can take the big giant brains and let the big giant brains figure out the hard stuff, but we can take care of the easy stuff. This to me has the potential for that. And I think it has the potential for us as a committee to really hang our hat on something this year and say, this is a thing that we did, right? This is a whole group of folks that we affected. So I'm overwhelmingly excited about the possibility of putting specifically us in this commission squarely in the middle of this work. Because if we do if we do move forward with some sort of a collaborative work group for some of these downtown misdemeanors, there's no reason why the PCOC shouldn't have a prominent seat at that table. So, yeah, that was, you can tell I'm excited.
This sounds so exciting. Commissioner Abdi, you have your hand up. You're on mute. Now I don't feel so bad.
Right. I'm like getting hype again because I'm just so excited about this myself. We can do this now, folks. Everybody on this call that's listening, our state, we can do this now. It's going to cut court costs. It's going to, rehabilitate and heal our communities, and it's going to help the people, like the court personnel. Like, it's just a win-win-win situation. And we have to be innovative when we're talking about these solutions in criminal justice reform. And if this is something, like Commissioner Sylvester said, low-hanging fruit, like, we have to do this. Like, I can't stress it enough.
I see Commissioner McGuire's hand up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. I have to make the comment as the immigration attorney. And so these are all really great programs. I just want to make this aware, and I know this will be, probably part of discussions going forward on policies and procedures, but any arrest for any of these types of offenses exposes someone to being taken into ICE custody, and most diversion programs will still be considered a conviction for in immigration court. So I think it's something, I know we're talking about crafting, and this is really the first steps, but the city does have a Department of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. So either, I think Commissioner Sarah seems well aware of it. So I just something I want to make sure is involved in these discussions, because there's going to be an intersection of it doesn't matter if they're not, if they're green card holders or undocumented, that can still expose people to immigration consequences, even if they're in a diversion program. So something to think about going forward.
Another reason why we shouldn't charge misdemeanors. Here we go. We got another one for the table.
Commissioner Sarah.
Yes. So thank you, Commissioner McGuire. That is such an excellent point. And the Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services is coming to speak at our June meeting. So I'm super happy and psyched about that. And just echoing what Commissioner Abdi said, that's what we're trying to get to here, is avoiding the charge in the first place, or even just the arrest, because what the professor and what Commissioner McGuire is helping me to understand is that even if there isn't a charge later, or the charge gets dropped, or it's in community court, it's the arrest, and that 3 nights or 2 nights in jail is it's huge. It's huge. And it's more than and it's more than we want for nuisance, nuisance, livability type crimes. I just want to share a few statistics around the Downtown 100, or SJP, that Commissioner Sylvester brought up. It only pertains to conduct in downtown. So it's not the whole city. It's just focused on downtown, really on Nicollet Mall is the main thing. Of all the people, only one person is white. Every single other person on that list is Black and Native American. And as Commissioner Sylvester noted, they have serious and persistent mental illness, co-occurring chemical abuse. I mean, just you name it. These are really vulnerable people, got a lot going on. So, and what I really appreciate about City Attorney Mary Ellen Hang is that she was really right there with us in the discussion, and she was not an ounce of defensive or nothing like that. It was an extremely productive, let's all get through this together conversation. And I felt really hopeful. And I also want to give her a shout out, because we almost didn't have that meeting because I wasn't able to get any data until I sent an email to Mary Ellen Hang, and she said, here's a bunch of data. And she just gave me all this stuff. And it was really terrific and really helpful. And she said, I even called her and I'm like, I'm seeing some numbers that make me so uncomfortable. And she's like, yeah. She wasn't trying to shy away from the fact that there's racial disparities and there's problems, and you know, she was really right there with us. So I feel like there's a lot of room to do some constructive discussions here. Since I see we have the mayor's staff on the line, one thing that the mayor and the police side can do is just start focusing on issuing citations or not for those kind of like low level nuisance livability offenses. And one thing the city attorney's office / council can do is start looking at charging decisions, like what do we want to charge, what do we not want to charge, and start looking at the misdemeanors on the books and start considering if we want to decriminalize any kind of conduct. And perhaps that's a research project for the group. I don't know, just kind of flagging that. I have a list in my mind, but that could be a discussion point.
Yeah, I know that we have done this before. A few years ago with the minor possession charges of marijuana, the petty offenses, and 46 of the individuals out of 47 were African American, and I just really need the MPD to stop criminalizing Black people for being Black. There are, like, downtown is very diverse, and there are other groups of people or individuals committing the same offenses or you know, engaging in the same behavior, but that yet they aren't being brought before the courts for the same thing. So yeah, I'm really going to need the MPD to take a look at that, and the city attorney's office and the prosecutor and the public defender's office, because I know Mary Moriarty was very instrumental in stopping that. So I know that she's no longer in that role, but the office is still there. And I do see that Commissioner Jacobson has had her hand up for a while.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I'm really excited about this too. This is long overdue. Having worked in many police departments, I will say that there are many divisions within the police departments that do understand that mental health plays a huge role in a lot of these behaviors that are being mistaken for criminalization. You know, people are being mistaken for bad guys when it really is just a mental health issue and a cry out for additional services. One of the things that we need to make sure that we look at if we're going to be involved in this big change is reaching out to our mental health stakeholders, people who actually specialize in this and who are willing to go out and, I guess, minister, maybe that's not the correct word, but reach out to the people who need help. One of the things that we're going to have to look at is the policy is going to have to change at the very, very top in order to administer any of our ideas, because right now, if you do have a mental health issue and you are an adult, it is up to you to seek services and take advantage of services or check yourself in mentally anywhere, which is how, unfortunately, some people end up in the criminal justice system, because they have the ability to say no and they refuse to help to get better. And then all of a sudden, then the police intervene, and it's just a vicious cycle. So we have to make sure that we advertise this to the right people that can have the right influence in helping people who do have misdemeanors or mental health issues get better, because that's where it's going to start. It's going to start with them saying, yes, I want this help and I'm going to participate in this help, instead of going to jail or committing what they see as misdemeanors over and over again and ending up in court. One thing I would like to say to your idea, Commissioner Sarah, I do know that when citations are issued and have been issued. In some cases, I won't say all, unfortunately, they don't get paid, and then that's how they end up in jail. So it's just like a vicious cycle. I'm not sure how handing out citations versus arrest will solve the issue. I think what it really does come down to other resources, talking with people and getting people help and on the right path.
Vice Chair Abdi, you're on mute. Do you have your hand up?
Yep. Yes, my fear with the citations, even though that like is one of the better alternatives, is just criminalizing poverty at that point, and then that's just a whole different beast. So we definitely don't want to do that. But what the discussion like also made me think about is, I would love to know like more about the science behind arrests and pressures potential officers might have, and just like that discussion. I don't know how we could know more about that. I'm sure people are worried about them exposing themselves. So that's just something that I also want to acknowledge, that like that might not be transparent either. But I would like to know more of like what are the officers going through on, like, is there a quota? Who's emphasizing that? What's the ranking like? These are just a lot of things that I think we need to look into.
Yeah, I would too. I would really like to know what triggers those arrests. Like what is the thinking process behind that? I see that Commissioner Sylvester has his hand up. And then Commissioner Jackson.
I mean, thinking about citations, I think a lot of the folks, I mean, from my experience dealing with these folks pretty much every day, there's a level of functionality that you have to achieve in order to start to begin to worry about receiving official mail and then paying a fine. And then, we also have to understand a lot of these people are on maybe a fixed income with permanent disability because of their mental illness. And so they're getting like $300 a month, right? And so like you send somebody a citation when they don't have a permanent address and they're self-medicating some sort of a mental illness with street drugs and alcohol, and just kind of literally just existing hour by hour and day by day in some cases, giving that person a fine, oftentimes they're not really going to even process, not that they don't know what it is, but they're not processing the urgency of that the way that I'm like, oh man, I got to pay this fine or else I'm going to get in trouble. Like there's just not that urgency. One of the things that really struck me about the discussion that I didn't mention earlier, I don't know if a lot of folks know, but they took the Millennium Hotel downtown during COVID and put a lot of formerly unsheltered people just in the hotel because there was nobody in the hotel. So the county made a deal and the state made a deal with the Millennium Hotel that says we have all these people we need to house, we'll pay you to house them. They took the deal, and talking to Mary Ellen, their misdemeanor caseload dropped precipitously simply because we put these people in a room with a door and a bathroom and some outlets, and like you can shut that door and maybe you're still drinking every day, right? But you're doing it behind a door in your room in that sheet. So that idea of housing, just simple housing, right? And what that does to this group of people, I think we have going forward, we have an amazing case study. COVID has given us an amazing case study in the Millennium Hotel, in the downtown, the Strategic Justice Initiative, and these individuals. So.
Yeah, thanks for that information, John. Commissioner Jacobson?
I would just like to go back to Commissioner Abdi's question about what's triggering the arrest. One of the things that we have to look at is a lot of the times it's the businesses, like the Downtown Business Council. These are people who have paid for space within our downtown area. And if they foresee someone, whether they have mental health issues or whether they just happen to be a person of color or something that they are not satisfied with, they do call the police because they believe that it's a deterrent for them to receive more business. whether we personally agree with that or not, it is just something that happens. We also have to look at the fact that too, each business council or county or city or whatever organization it be, they do receive a budget, whether they have that budget from people donating or whether they put their money together and create that budget, or whether that budget is government funds. They have a budget, and within that budget, they decide how much they want to put towards security. If their security happens to be the city police or the local agencies, the local agency police departments, that's who they call and that's who they funnel their money into. We need more security down here. We need, or they'll pay for security, and then security will, if there's only so much that they can do, then they will call the police. So what we're looking at, it definitely has to be a joint effort. We need all the stakeholders to come to the table so that we can get to some sort of agreement. What is the issue? What is it that we want to change, and how can we change it and make it better for everyone involved? Because at that point, you're putting the business owners against the people with mental health, against the people who are constituents outside that lives in the outskirts of the cities, against the police, and then it just all turns into yuck. It's like everybody has to come to the table and figure out what the issue is and how can we make it better for everyone involved. Because if we don't have our businesses and they're not satisfied with everything that's going on, then they move out of the city. The city can't generate the things for the people who live here, like stores and grocery stores and activities and things for our kids and that sort of thing. So it's everybody makes the world go round. So we need everybody to agree. So we can't just say business owners stop complaining. We have to try to find some solution that's going to make them happy, and that's going to make people happy and make us constituents feel safe, no matter what color we are, no matter what our health issues are. Everybody has a right to live. We just want to make sure it happens right.
Commissioner Sylvester? Did you still have your hand up?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to put it down. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Okay. Commissioner Sarah?
This is a question for Commissioner Jacobson. I'm confused. Are you saying that businesses are donating money to the Minneapolis Police Department?
No, that is not what I said. I said that every business has a budget and they get to decide how much they want to funnel into security measures. So if they want to have meetings with security departments and ask them for help, and the security departments only have so much jurisdiction, so then they're forced to call the police because they can't make arrests or they can't make someone leave, then that's what happens. It's a domino effect, basically.
I've got so many thoughts going on in my head right now. I'm not quite even sure how to formulate a sentence. Research has proven multiple times that poverty is the #1 driver of crime. And I think that the downtown business owners, understanding that they are in downtown Minneapolis, that there may be unpleasant, uncomfortable situations with some of the downtown residents. I know the PCOC can't make people be compassionate. But I think that when we're talking about we all need to agree, then I think that business owners need to give a little as well, instead of just demanding that all their wants or desires be met, that everything just be the way it is for how they want it, that they have to understand that they're doing business in downtown Minneapolis and that they are going to encounter situations that they may not be pleased with. But calling the cops and jailing citizens who may not even be competent is not the answer. Is not the answer. So business owners, I think, may need to take a look at their own practices, and then maybe we can sit down and talk about everybody getting on the same page. Because, it's just, there's a little phrase going around, profit before people. And that's what keeps running through my head. That's why I wasn't really even sure how to say what I wanted to say. But like, people's lives are being impacted by this horrendously, and not just them, but their families as well. And we don't need to allow that to continue just to please business owners. If those business owners decide that they don't care for the environment and they decide to pack up and leave, then maybe new business owners who have a better understanding of the populace of downtown and the events that occur daily can take their place. Don't know how that would work, but I mean, that's just my thought. And I think that Commissioner Sylvester has his hand up. Yes.
So that's a big reason why I advocated in this for the inclusion of like the downtown improvement district, the downtown council, those business owners, those large stakeholders, the large corporations that have just a big stake in downtown. Another thing that I've seen over the last kind of 18 months working downtown is that when so many people left, right, because of COVID, when a lot of that downtown business crowd just kind of left downtown because of COVID, the infrastructure that supports a lot of these people, because let's be honest, like, it takes a lot of infrastructure, both public and private, to support a lot of these folks, right? And there's a reason that a lot of these folks gather downtown is because of that infrastructure. That infrastructure for those folks is not successful if we don't have a thriving business community, right? And so this is a completely symbiotic relationship. You don't have, I mean, if you want to see a downtown that doesn't have anybody in it, you can go to Indianapolis. It's horrible. It's nothing but one-way street. Hey, it's nothing but one-way streets for people that live 50 miles away. And if we want to be a place for, full of one-way streets for people that live in Forest Lake, then we can talk about that. We did that for 30 years, right? But fundamentally, there is, for intelligent people who understand this issue and compassionate people who want to get involved in this issue, this is a symbiotic relationship 100%. There is no business versus these folks. There is no these folks versus the cops. This is a completely symbiotic relationship, which is why, to me, we have a role in bringing these stakeholders together, which is why, to me, we have a unique position as the PCOC to pull in all of these different resources and stakeholders. And why I'm going to just keep banging the drum on this is for us to get more people at the table to talk about this small group of people, because then it's scalable. It's scalable to the rest of the city, because this is your major density. It's scalable to Uptown. It's scalable to the North Side. It's scalable to Southeast. Like, it's scalable to George Floyd Square. It's scalable everywhere you want to go if we can figure it out in the really difficult places.
Yeah. Vice Chair Abdi.
Yeah, something just has to give at this point. Like, what we're doing is just not working, and like, these conversations are just so difficult to have, because like, I feel like the biggest thing is we need people to have empathy. Like, can we just be kind? Like, you know what I mean? Just like, how can we hold people accountable without dehumanizing them? Like, we're asking people to have empathy that don't want to, can't, don't have anything to do with the situation. So it's like, how do we motivate those people? It's a culture switch. It's a mind shift. Like, I don't know how. I'm hopeful, but let's just all be kind.
Great discussion. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Good job, Commissioner Sarah. I'm really excited about this. Absolutely. Yes.
I guess, sorry, maybe I should ask a question here. There was some like email discussion about if I want documents or the one subcommittee wants documents or data, it should be discussed before the whole commission or something. I'm not really quite sure what the point was, but anyhow, I had a very hard time getting data and documentation. It was suggested that maybe this was a conversation appropriate for the entire commission, and I'm hearing a lot of enthusiasm and interest from the other commissioners. So if this is an appropriate moment, I would like to maybe just take everyone's temperature and see, is this a conversation we'd like to have as the full commission, or, you know, how can we bang this drum and
Right.
move it forward? Yeah.
Well, I, for one, after reading the emails, if that's the process in which we need to engage for you to get this data, then yes, that's my, yes, I would like for the city to be able to provide you with that data. How does everybody else on the commission feel? Do we want to take a roll, or just, how do we do this?
I think that the point, and perhaps Andrew Hawkins could speak to this more fully, but I think the point that he raised about the data is that if the full commission makes a motion or refers a specific topic to a subcommittee, so that the work is flowing from the full commission to the subcommittee. Does
Okay,
that make
so
sense?
How would one of us word that motion then? Like, what is the specific subject material that you would need, Commissioner Sarah?
Well, I have a whole list of agenda items that I would like to do in the subcommittee. I guess I'm a little concerned because that's not what our process or our operating rules state. There's nothing about the full commission sort of approving the projects for the, you know, we're meant to be subcommittees so we can do our own work and bubble things up if we need to, or, you know, there is a flow for an open project that would then go through the appropriate channels of the commission. So do I need to ask permission to do every one of my agendas for the future?
Can you address that, Andrew, for us, please?
Absolutely. So as you know, you've all been appointed to the PCOC as 9 individuals. It's the collective body of the PCOC that's responsible for making these decisions. My concern, as was expressed in email, I'm happy to share those emails with anybody that's interested, was that it's a body of the PCOC as a whole that drives the work. Again, like, nothing that I've said is a judgment on the merits of any of these speakers. I think that exactly the one that you're talking about, actually, like, I've heard very good things. It sounds incredibly interesting. But my encouragement was that that might be something that's better served to the whole audience of the PCOC. So that way you all, as 9 independent commissioners, have the opportunity to ask direct questions, to discuss this in a public forum at your meeting as a body, the body of the whole, which is the one where, members of the community, especially when we're meeting on site, this is generally the highest attended meeting. This is the one where you have the largest audience, you have the largest stage, all of the commissioners are present. And so that was sort of my encouragement was to, if you're going to be doing all these things, it's the work plan is dictated by the body. Every one of you is a member of this commission, and every one of you has a say in how your resources are allocated, and how your resources are used from the city enterprise as a whole. So again, if the body wants to delegate everything to another group, you're completely able to do so, and you're not going to hear anything from me. It's just, that was my suggestion, because I want to make sure that everything's going through this entire group and that you're having an opportunity to weigh in on what the work plan is. So. And this actually is, it's in the operating procedures of, I believe the Policy and Procedure Committee is intended to not replace, but to supplement for areas that this group might miss. And so, I mean, with this specific example, I think it's a good opportunity to raise that as something that could potentially fall under that category. If this is something that the group was not aware of, raising this issue, putting it on the agenda, and giving the speakers an opportunity to address your full commission and have the largest audience in terms of citizens that might be in attendance, seems like a worthwhile opportunity. Additionally, with like these, these items being added to an agenda of one specific subcommittee that doesn't constitute a quorum of the commission, it's like a reverse engineering of the work plan, at least in my opinion. If the body itself feels that that's fine, that's completely acceptable. It's, it's up to all of you to figure out what you want to do. But I mean, that was my recommendation, is running this through the full commission. Like, I mean, every one of these people was appointed, so I think that it's a good idea to give them all an opportunity to ask questions directly from these people. Like, if we have these fantastic speakers that are contributing to the public discourse around this topic, like, I mean, that's why you all are here. So like, why not give everybody a chance to weigh in directly? I mean, I've heard, like Commissioner Sylvester, Commissioner Abdi, like Commissioner Sarah, like all of you speak to like how impactful and like profound like some of these people were. So like, it's like giving the rest of the commission that same opportunity to ask those questions directly of like the subject matter experts, like just seems like it's a really big win, and like it's a really good, it's the best way to use your platform. And like by doing that, like you could have those people come talk to you. This full body could then refer that work to your group, and for like where like the like the nuts and bolts stuff gets hammered out, or they could just run with it like you're doing, like you might do right now, and just say like, this is phenomenal, like we're going with this, like let's get it done. But at least that way it's like you had the whole, the whole body of the PCOC is what's driving the work.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, the whole body needs to give Commissioner Sarah permission to go forward with what she's already doing?
It depends on what, I suppose in that case, it depends on what you're asking. So it's like, if you want, like for data requests, simply being a commissioner of a commission or committee in the city of Minneapolis doesn't allow anybody to jump the queue on other, like, other citizens that might have a data request. Like we get a massive volume of data requests in. And so in terms of when we do these collaborative projects, it's to support the work plan of the body as a whole. And so the body as a whole is all of you right now, voting to dictate what's on your work plan, because as we put other things on a work plan, everything requires some staff component to it. So I want to make sure that if there's resources that are being allocated to something that are impacting something else, that you've all at least had a chance to vote on it and you get a majority vote and it moves forward. Like, I mean, I know, and again, in this specific example, like it would be, I believe there was something that got referred back to the PNP committee that got tabled. And like, that's the work that the actual commission body as a whole had referred to the PNP, but it was tabled for 2 other presentations, which again, like from what I've heard, that were wonderful. But like that work got tabled for 2 presentations that were never like, like the entire body as a whole never had a chance to decide whether or not this was something that belonged on the work plan.
I'm gonna put a pin in that and come back to that, but I see several hands up. And I believe I saw Commissioner Jacobson's hand first, and then Commissioner Pinot, and then Commissioner Sarah. Oh, and City Clerk Carl is also here.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I don't disagree with Hawkins. I think that he's got a point. Commissioner Sarah, would it make it easier for you if you just presented your agenda at one of the meetings and we made a motion to accept the agenda, and then they're going forward, whatever's on that agenda and whatever information that you had to seek out or request that you had to put in for data, that automatically gives you our support to move forward with that just by accepting your agenda, because that would make it easier. If we accept your agenda and you say, okay, these are the things that I need to do to make this happen, with us accepting the agenda, you've already got the go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to talk about my agendas and present them because that's great, but that's not how the subcommittees work. The chair sets the agenda for each subcommittee, and just like the chair sets the agenda for this PCOC, and it's never been the practice before that the chair of a subcommittee had to get the permission of the full commission to have a discussion in the subcommittee. And this conversation went really, really well, and I'm like, woo, and everyone's like, woo. It could have been a dud, Professor Natapov could have come in from the West Coast and given us all these ideas, and we looked at each other like, this isn't gonna work. Like this could have been something we didn't want to elevate up to the commission. That's the purpose of the subcommittees, is to sort of like do some work on the side to see like, is this something we want to do or not? Or there is work that kind of is bubbled down, and I don't really know what was tabled. We've invited you, Mr. Hawkins, to attend our meetings many times, and you haven't. So we're all in this together, and the the ordinance says that city staff is supposed to assist members of the PCOC in gathering data and information. So I don't really understand what this disconnect is.
Well, it almost feels to me as if the subcommittee is being treated as a separate entity from the PCSE. I don't know. That's just how my brain is translating this, and that doesn't make sense, basically. I mean, but I'm going to ask Commissioner Pinot, did you still have a comment? I did see your hand up, but I don't now. So did you still?
You can go past me. I feel like it's not germane to the conversation anymore. Okay, I'm going to call on City Clerk Carl at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to maybe take a stab at reiterating a comment that Mr. Hawkins made. And this is sort of, I'll call it, I don't want to call it Robert's Rules. Let's call it meeting body 101. The PCOC, as you all know, is a single body. That's what Mr. Hawkins was saying. There are 9 members that are appointed by the mayor and the council to a single body. The authority under the enabling legislation that creates the PCOC is delegated and vested in the 9-member PCOC. There is no authority delegated to your subcommittees. Those subcommittees don't even have to exist. They exist because you've created them. So the work of those subcommittees, therefore, has to be delegated by this body. That's all Mr. Hawkins is saying, is that rather than have a committee of 3, which is not even a quorum of the body, make these decisions that then drive the work, drive the resources, consume the time of the whole body, it needs to start from the body and go downward. And then the committees, which are sub-working groups, can feed things back. But when that loop is broken, and 1 member or less than a quorum is driving an agenda that the entire body may not have approved, that is not how bodies operate. Bodies are groups of equals. Each of the 9 of you are equals. Even the chair doesn't have more authority than what the body gives to the chair. Right. So the PCOC is the full authority. If you wish to delegate to one of your subcommittees some scope of work, I think Mr. Hawkins was pointing to your operating roles, you have that authority, you have that capability. I think from my perspective, again, being fairly, I don't want to keep using this new, but still learning how the PCOC is operating, I don't know that there's been a lot of definition to some of these work projects. For example, although I attended the last Policy and Procedure Subcommittee report, and I concur with many of the comments by those who were there, it was an amazing presentation. I walked away in awe myself. I'm still not sure how that came up. It wasn't discussed at the PCOC at all. So it originated at a subcommittee level. It was a great presentation. It's now coming back to the PCOC, which is good. And I'm hearing there's interest by the PCOC to continue this scope of work. However, as someone who attended that, I'm not clear on what that scope of work is. Right. So I don't have a define like what is the subcommittee, if it's going to go back to policy and procedure, if that work is going to continue. I've heard some people suggest the PCOC perhaps is going to convene discussions with maybe community-based groups. There was, again, so, from a perspective of just listening to this meeting, there's been a lot of good ideation, a lot of brainstorming, but I'm not certain what that direction is. So what are we hoping to achieve? Mostly that would be, the body saying, we want to do A, B, C, here's the time frame, here's responsible, and we as the commission, by a majority vote at least, are saying we want this scope of work to proceed. We need staff and resources to be aligned around that. So I think that is what Mr. Hawkins is saying, is that the body controls its work plan, its priorities, its delegation of, yes, subcommittee, go do this, or yes, member, we're asking you to make a contact to, maybe through your network, you have some information and can get that for us. All it is referencing that the PCOC is the body and the staff needs to take direction from the body, which means even the subcommittees. It's difficult for us to juggle. And I guess another reality to remind you all of is there is not a single FTE out of the 4,000 in the city whose job is to support the PCOC. There are several of us who help contribute to your work, but there's not a full-time staff who are just, twiddling their thumbs waiting to gather a lot of data or do a lot of research. So that's why it's good for us to have direction from the body we can say, no, this is prioritized. The PCOC voted to do this. This is something they want us to spend our time doing. And we would do that even with council and council committees. We need to have that driven by the body, that's a priority of this group. And that helps us to prioritize and plan and marshal resources internally, and also to respect the body as it exists, the 9 of you. So Mr. Hawkins can say if I captured that, but I think that's where he was going.
Well, I understood that. Not that you weren't making sense, Andrew. I was just having a hard time to understanding, but I get it. Commissioner Fano, I see your hand back up.
In an effort to make sure that the hard work of the Policy and Procedure Committee does go recognized here, since we are a quorum of this body, would it be appropriate to receive and file the publicly available presentation and documentation of that subcommittee, given that we've had at least an overview? We obviously weren't there for some of it, but we are at least able, I believe, as someone who was not there, to have an informed vote on defining scope right now, because I do believe that what the clerk mentioned is appropriate. It's good that we define scope and intentions. So why don't we just do that? I mean, and if Commissioner Sarah has the expertise on this right now, I would happily encourage her to propose a intention of this body and a scope. We can have a short discussion on it and then vote on it, and then we can start the ball rolling. And we don't have to have a full-on presentation afterwards. We just, need to, articulate our intentions.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is the body in agreement that we would like to direct the subcommittee, the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee, to define their scope, the intention of this work, provide us with the materials, and then we can have a discussion and then add these items to have Commissioner Sarah have, oh gosh, I don't even know, put it on the agenda. So as a body, do we agree that this is how we want to move forward on this? Do we want to call a roll or just show of hands? How are we going to do this?
Chair Jackson, if
Yes,
I might, are you talking about them defining a scope, and are you talking about referring this specific work that's been discussed regarding misdemeanors and low-level offenses?
Yes.
And referring that to the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee to ask them to define a scope and intention of that work to move forward?
I believe that's what Andrew and Casey are saying that we need to do. Is that correct? Or am I still confused?
I believe that's correct. That you can refer this back to the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee as a motion of the body to refer this matter to them to define a scope and intention of the work and bring it back to the full body.
Commissioner Fano, I see that you have a question.
I know we're lost in the world of Robert's rules, and I apologize. Do you mind if I ask just directly and we kind of just have a direct question to Commissioner Sarah?
Please do.
Commissioner Sarah, what is your intention with what you want to do with this information? What would you like to see come out of this?
I would like to see more data around arrest rates. That was the piece of data that I was missing. I have charging rates, but I don't have arrest rates, and I feel like that is an important piece.
Okay.
which would include just the arrest for the type of offense and demographic data around that. I think we need to identify stakeholders, as multiple people have shared, and like talk about who all those people would be and bring them together, probably outside the commission, but the commission would participate in this work. You know, we're not going to once a month have a, like, this group isn't going to solve this problem in a month.
Yes.
You know, like, we need all the people. We need all the people.
Yep.
So maybe like identifying who the stakeholders should be, like asking those kinds of questions, like who needs to be at the table, business owners, parole, all that. I think we also need to, maybe we should identify misdemeanors that we think should be decriminalized, so that they wouldn't even be part of this criminal justice landscape. And one thing Attorney Heng identified for us is that there might be roadblocks around citation versus arrest. So she suggested we speak to MPD officers, and I think someone else on this call said the same. I don't know how to facilitate that. You know, I don't know who to call and say, you know, Chief Arredondo, would you please send me 10 of your finest to have this conversation or something, you know? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So that, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, either of the clerks, articulates intention.
And scope.
We have articulated intention and scope. We are a deliberative body. So that means we can, I mean, if we want to, have a short discussion on whether or not that intention and scope is of interest to this body. I feel like we've had a discussion on that, but at least providing the time for that. And given that we provide time for discussion, we can now, since we've articulated that scope and intention, have a vote on whether or not the body supports that scope and intention. Is that fair? And I'm looking to the clerks to see if we have met the satisfaction of articulating that scope and intention.
Can you summarize for me in one sentence what that intention is?
A request for data. This body has proposed a request for data around arrest rates, identifying stakeholders relevant to those arrest rates, potential misdemeanors to be considered decriminalized by the city, and the final point, because I did not write it down, Commissioner Sarah.
Engagement or input from MPD officers.
Yes. Yeah. And we could potentially request officers from the first precinct, since they are the ones that are making the arrests or handing out the citations.
Okay, so an additional scope specifically to the first precinct.
Yes.
I'd say the fourth too. A lot came from them. The fourth precinct. Wasn't that in the presentation, Commissioner?
Are we focusing on downtown?
Oh, that's right. Okay, I get it.
Because that would be the first precinct.
And Madam Chair, I'm going to take a step back. My intrusion was to just try to focus the conversation. I hope that was satisfactory to you and the clerks.
Yes, you said it very succinctly, and I was struggling, so I appreciate your help there.
Could I, Madam Chair, could I clarify one point on the stakeholders? I was not clear. Identifying stakeholders relevant to the arrest rates, or was it identifying stakeholders to work in this collaborative group?
I'm seeing head nods. I do believe the latter is what I meant.
Yes.
So you would be asking staff to identify those stakeholders? Or would the policy and procedure group be identifying those stakeholders?
I do believe the way I articulate it is asking staff to do the work. At this point, this isn't my committee. I'm going to yield to Commissioner Sarah, because she has the subject matter that she's more well equipped to talk about the intricacies of your question.
I'm ready to talk, but I see Commissioner Sylvester has his hand up, and he was really relevant on this point. So I'd like Commissioner Sylvester might have the better answer.
Oh, okay.
I think we can. I think we can identify those stakeholders. I think that's something that the subcommittee can do. I don't. The point about FTEs assigned to the commission was well taken with me, and I think, yeah, I think that's something that we could take on if it makes sense.
Yeah, if it's appropriate. I mean, I think that when you bring your materials back to the body, per se, if there are, we'll have discussion, of course. So if there's someone that's been overlooked, or someone that maybe isn't a best fit, then we can talk about that at that time. But yes.
And Commissioner McGuire's points today were brilliant, and I've already added some other folks to like my mental list of people that, you know what I mean? So even in this brief discussion, that idea of stakeholders is growing. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Vice Chair Abdi.
So I do like that we're doing the first precinct, just to emphasize like scaling and how we're talking about downtown, and I think that could be a good place to start. Around the conversations around the police officers, just one thought that I had is, if we ask these the officers to come and speak on the record, are they going to be transparent, honest, in their training and all that? I have a fear that they're not going to be, because one, of exposing themselves, and maybe fear of retaliation. I don't know what it is, but would it be worth just going straight to leadership to have those kind of conversations? Because at least it's just ranking purposes. Like, I don't know.
Leadership of the MPD?
Yeah. Instead of like officers, because they might not be able to afford to make these kind of comments.
I don't know whether we'd receive any greater transparency from leadership.
But does that make sense, y'all? Like how an officer might be apprehensive to have these kind of conversations?
The sweet spot to me in that hunt is probably precinct leadership, right? So you have people who have experience within the precinct and lead that precinct, but you also don't have, for better or worse, forgive me if this is inappropriate, but you don't have the professional politician level senior leadership, right? But I would honestly never ask a beat cop to come sit in this room. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be incredibly uncomfortable for that person. I think I agree that we wouldn't get great data, but I think if we got precinct leadership in here and we came to them saying we want to be part of, the solutions, what type of solutions do you think we could be a part of? I think we'd get an outstanding reception.
They would absolutely be a stakeholder, so we'd need to be speaking with them anyway. Commissioner Sarah?
Maybe this is a space where staff could help, just because I don't want to be inappropriate. I don't want to call the beat cop and, make someone uncomfortable. And I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to just call Chief Arredondo either and say, who's your precinct leadership? Maybe this is where staff could really just help us as employees of the city and just identify the right couple of people to help with this discussion.
Yep. I think that's true, yes. So do we have any further discussion on this matter, or are we ready to, okay, Commissioner Jackson, or Pinot, I'm sorry.
It's all good. Maybe because we were having the way I articulated that laundry list of emotion before was not the most clear, but baby steps, little successes, and the end of that conversation was a very clear next directive, and maybe that's where we can continue this forward, is really just asking staff to identify either precinct captains or whatever this group believes is most relevant. Just identifying, and then we can take that next step of talking about data after we have conversations with those people. We can talk about the possibility of decriminalizing misdemeanors after that. We don't need to have the cart and the horse and the cart's cart all in the same line. Let's just take one of these things at a time, and I think that's a great place to start. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's in the right process.
Okay.
I'm feeling motivated, y'all.
Yes. So,
sorry, I went to mute myself.
With no objection, I would like to direct city staff to provide Commissioner Sarah with the data that she needs to go forward with this work, and then bring it back to the commission for discussion. Does anybody have any objection, or is that not the process? Am I saying it wrong still?
I second that motion.
Okay. Okay, so directed. That actually brings us to the end of our agenda. Do we have anything
You added
else?
one item. You added one item to your agenda, Madam Chair. You'll recall there was a discussion added on 38th in Chicago.
About George Floyd Square. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, so without objection, let's move on to that. And Commissioner Sarah, since you brought the motion, I'll give you the floor.
Thanks. So I'll just share that I live really close to George Floyd Square, so this is sort of in my space. Last week and then also this morning, the city came in, I believe, with an order from the mayor to clear all or part of the barriers within George Floyd Square, and there were city workers and bulldozers and all this to make it accessible for traffic. I think some monuments were remaining, but just to be accessible for traffic. So my discussion point that I'm suggesting isn't about what should happen with George Floyd Square, like in the world, like traffic, no traffic or whatever, because I think the city had actually done some research on that and had like a survey and engagement and all that. So I think there is like data on that and information, which I don't have. I guess what I wanted to talk about is doing that kind of thing at 4 in the morning when it's still dark and there hasn't been an announcement and there hasn't been just, I mean, really just to say, this is the decision the city made and it is happening on this day at this time, just for transparency and just so it's understood. I would just like to start a discussion and say, I personally think that doing it in the darkness with no announcement, no notice was a mistake. I think it's been very provocative. It's causing a lot of tension. There's been nothing but helicopters. The police were not in George Floyd Square, but they were around Powderhorn Park and really close. And like my kids couldn't go to the park with their daycare because it was full of police officers. I mean, this is a big deal. This is not just like a thing. So that was a discussion I wanted to have.
I'm going to reserve my comment. Would anybody else like to? Okay, Commissioner Jacobson.
Would it be worth opening up that conversation for community discussion, like holding a special meeting to get community feedback and how others from your community feel about it, so we can get some momentum of what we would like to do or what we would like to express as a committee?
Commissioner Sylvester.
There's an idea I've been kicking around here for a minute about maybe our August meeting, kind of dovetailing, and the trial for the other officers was pushed back. But I think I love our public comment period, And I was wondering if there was maybe an opportunity to dovetail off of the other Commissioner Jacobson just did, but the idea of maybe having a meeting, a PCOC meeting in a park where we could almost exclusively create a healing space and have public comment, right? Or just have one of our meeting and we could all bring our cats to the park. And basically, I know I never really finished the paperwork, which was pretty awful for my $50 stipend. I don't know if anybody else is living off that $50 stipend. I was wondering if maybe we could pool some of that $50 stipend and find probably like a mobile barbecue caterer and feed people in a park and have one of our meetings in a park where we have free food for folks and they could come and they could sit outside and we could have a PA and it could still be streamed. We could take a bunch of public comment, but then we could actually just bring this meeting to people. It's an idea I've been kicking around.
I am enthusiastically in support of that idea. Absolutely. I think that members of the public, I think, have a lot to say about this. They just may not always know the correct format or who to speak to, where to go to have their voices heard. And I know that there are a lot of Minneapolis residents that are inflamed over how the city conducted themselves this morning. It felt like an ambush. Commissioner Pinot, I think I saw your hand first.
Yeah. In an effort to try to turn the last two comments into an action item, I'd like to make a motion to refer the feasibility of creating an event based off of one of our meetings in the future to the community outreach committee, and have that community outreach committee draft up a budget of what that might look like and work with staff to address logistics regarding such an event.
Was that a motion?
It was. I
I
move.
second that. As a member of the outreach committee, I second that. Yes. Commissioner Jacobson. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Sarah, you were there first.
Hey, sorry, I was trying to escape my children. I second Commissioner Pinot's motion right there. I think, and I love that idea. I also had just, I mean, I see that we have Mr. Jeffries on the line. If we could maybe just ask for information about why the mayor made that choice to not have an announcement. And I think we could decide tonight if we wanted to talk about just, do we recommend that the mayor and the council make an announcement? Or, I'm not speaking of like open or close it or anything like that. Just a recommendation around communication is what my concern is.
I don't, Chair Jackson, with your permission, we did have a motion and a second.
Oh,
Did
okay.
you want to vote
Yes.
on that, or do you
I
want to
think
move on?
I think I'd like to listen to a few more comments before
Okay.
you do that. Yeah, because
Just want to check so we didn't
Okay.
get lost on that.
Okay. Mr. Jeffries, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Jackson. Thank you, Commissioner Sarah. I'll be very brief and just try to keep this as apolitical as possible. Really, this was about most paramount safety for not only for city workers, but for everyone. We made that decision just based upon, there aren't a lot of people out at that time. And like I mean, we'll be quite frank here, there are a lot of mixed feelings about whether, this intersection should stay closed or, or become open again. And the to Commissioner Sarah's earlier point, there was a survey put out, and that survey pretty clearly said it was like around, I think 60 or so percent, that a majority of the residents and businesses that reside around that location wanted the intersection to become open again. And so we wanted to go about that in the most peaceful, community-oriented way possible. And there was, I think, given the mixed opinions on this intersection, there wasn't a way to make everyone happy. There just wasn't. And so we tried to go about it in a way that was safest for everyone involved. And so I'll just leave it at that. There was, as Commissioner Sarah also noted, not really any kind of, I would say, not really any kind of police presence here. We tried to do this just using city personnel who we had contracted with, who, Public Works, and just do it in a way that was, that we felt was the best option for us. And that, I mean, this wasn't an easy decision by any means. And the mayor, everyone involved, thought about this very carefully. And so to speak, for the timing of it, and just the kind of the lack of announcement, it was primarily for safety.
Commissioner Sarah.
So just observation, police were absolutely involved. They were present. My kids couldn't play in the park. They were present. So my question for you, Mr. Jeffries, is, has the mayor then made a decision? Has the mayor then made a decision to open up this George Floyd Square to traffic, and thusly, are we just going to be seeing this, at 4 a.m. or whatever time? Is this just going to be what they're doing until the end of time, or what's the plan?
Sorry, is it all right, Chair Jackson, if I respond? Yeah, I don't want to talk out of turn.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Commissioner Sarah, thank you for your question. So I would say that it kind of just depends on the circumstances. The objective here, and I think the mayor has been very clear about this in talking publicly, is that a large majority of the business owners and the residents there want the intersection reopened. And he's, just really trying to listen to the people who are living there, who are working there. And that, we're not trying to go about this in a combative way. We're trying to go about this in, we're trying to go about this in the most peaceful and respectful way that we can. We're trying to preserve everything, that is there, the plants, the memorials, all of it, and we're trying to eventually lead to a permanent bump out and memorialization of that intersection. And so it, ultimately, that is the goal. It is to preserve, but also to make sure that that neighborhood remains viable, and to make sure that the people there are safe, that they are, that anyone is able to just go through freely. And that's really kind of the objective here, is just to really restore some normalcy, but also to just make sure that we're also memorializing that space too, and remembering George Floyd. So I think that is ultimately the objective there, and we're trying to go about that in the most diplomatic and peaceful way possible. But again, this is a very controversial situation, so we're objectively not going to please everyone.
Commissioner Pinot.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Jeffries. I know that you didn't anticipate being asked questions right now, so I do appreciate your candor. Do you know whether or not the results of that survey are available to the public?
I would have to look online. I believe that it is under the 38th in Chicago webpage of the city website.
Okay, that would be great if you could, or if staff could. I know it's not your job, but if someone could, distribute the survey results. I know I would be interested, and others would be too.
Yeah,
I gather.
That's what thank you, Jackson. Commissioner Jacobson.
Which brings me back to my original suggestion that we should probably move forward with having some sort of dialogue from the community so that we can get opinions and conversation from the actual residents who live in the community more than, so that we can get an idea, not to be mixing one job with the other here or my positions, but I've had conversations with community members that absolutely agree with Commissioner Sarah, and I've had conversations with community members who wanted it open because they said that for safety reasons, sometimes they could not get police to come there to keep them safe in some instances because things were getting, people were taking advantage of the fact that it was shut down and people were still grieving. And then you had some people that were taking advantage of that and crime was spiking. So there were people who wanted it open so that they could have more activity and more safety. So I understand what Jeffries is saying. I've seen and heard both sides of it. And I think for us to be fair, maybe we should have some community dialogue around it. I can't personally speak for it for myself because although I'm grieving the loss of George Floyd, I don't live in that particular area of South Minneapolis, so I can't personally speak to it, which would make more sense to have other additional community members.
Vice Chair Abdi.
So I just want to lift up like what it sounded like was the original concern, and please, Commissioner Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. It wasn't that like the barriers were taken down, because if the survey says it was more than 60% or whatever, that's what the people want, whatever narrative we want to tell each other. It was more of how they did it is what is angry, and that I just like want to speak out is just comes off as inappropriate, shady, and insensitive. So I understand we want to be apolitical and things like that, but it was inappropriate.
So to probably wrap this up, we had a motion, it was seconded for the outreach committee or subcommittee work with city staff for logistics, budget, maybe some activities, events, how to go about having this public engagement event surrounding George Floyd Square. So City Clerk Brock, if you could, or does anybody else have anything to say before I call for a vote? Yes, Commissioner Sarah.
I'd like to make a separate motion, so I think we should probably vote, and then I'll make my motion after we vote. Is that okay?
Yes, so we are voting on the motion for the outreach committee to put together a community engagement event.
You ready for me to call the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Abdi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Well, then that motion is carried. Ouch. And I will direct the clerk to receive and file this report. Commissioner Sarah, you had another motion that you wanted to place before the commission.
I'd make a motion for this commission to share its opinion with the mayor's office that if the mayor has indeed made a decision about opening, closing, taking action at George Floyd Square, that he should make that opinion public with some notice and just allow the community to receive that information. And the reason I am making this motion is because I don't want to see just a series of random events at the middle of the night and we wake up and there's helicopters and Twitter's on fire and it's not working.
Okay, Commissioner Jackson. Why do I keep saying that?
It's all right. It's because we both have a good
Yes.
quality name, and that's why. I want to preface this by saying I get you. I am 100% on your side. I'm just bringing this up because I see how other people could see this as a critique. And I'm trying to have a good, healthy conversation about that. So please don't see me as a Debbie Downer on this. Germaneness and the scope of our authority as a police conduct oversight commission. As long as it involves the policies and procedures of police, it is of my opinion that it's within our jurisdiction. If it is outside that jurisdiction, then we have a different type of discussion on our hands. So I would love for someone to rest my uneasiness about that before I have to make a vote on this, because I am of the opinion that right now it's kind of in a gray area, and I would love for it to not be in a gray area.
Commissioner Jacobson, did you still have a comment that you wanted to make before I address Commissioner Pinot's remark?
Yeah, I would just like to say he took the words right out of my mouth. That's actually what I was raising my hand to say. I'm concerned about that too. And I don't know if I can honestly say that I would vote aye to that, because I do feel like it might be out of our scope of what we are on this commission to do. It doesn't mean that we can't go to another commission and voice our opinions as constituents, but I just don't think that is for PCOC to push forward.
Civil Rights Commission might be a perfect spot for that.
I agree.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I had to say doesn't really fit here well. So, Commissioner Sarah. Okay. You're on mute.
Reading the chat. So the ordinance that establishes the PCOC says that we'll do oversight work around police and matters related to the police. So that's how I came to this discussion here, is that this is very much related to the police. It was, of course, a police murder of George Floyd. There's police presence, discussion of who can come in and out. I mean, it's just there. But, I'm hearing discomfort from the group. It's not my intention to divide the group. And I'm also hearing feedback that perhaps my motion isn't even necessary, since of course Mr. Jeffries is here, and I hope he's still here and listening, and I hope he didn't just mute me or something. Perhaps the message has been received, and so perhaps, so let me just do this. I'm going to withdraw the motion because I feel like I'm pushing back and I don't want to make people uncomfortable. I've voiced my opinion. If others want to voice their opinion, Mr. Jeffries is here. God bless us.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Jeffries, would you like to address this or no?
Yep, I am still here. I've message received loud and clear. You know, I think that you are not alone in being displeased with this. Yeah, and I can certainly run this up the chain too. Absolutely.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need that motion then. Do I need to direct staff?
I withdraw it.
Oh yeah, you did. Okay, I'm sorry. No, I have this wild kitten over here that claws are doing damage. I'm trying to keep her together. Anybody want a beautiful little kitten? Oh God. Okay. I believe that concludes our agenda. Are there any other comments, questions, anything else that we need to discuss? It's 8:01. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Ow! Oh my goodness. This is a wild child. No? Okay, so with that, we have concluded all items on our agenda for this meeting, and I will see everybody back here next month on July 13th for our next meeting. I think we had a great meeting tonight. Peace, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll be speaking. Okay, good night.